to another Britflix.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is filmmaker and co-director of Terror Arcade, Jess Bartlett. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
What we're going to do is we're going to introduce the Britflix audience to Terror Arcade, your production company, sort of aiming at making horror shorts, of which I've watched a few of them, and they're very good. I can vouch for that, for starters. And you can tell me what that's all about. And then we'll go on to 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Does that sound okay?
That sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, let's start at the top then with Terror Arcade. You're specialising in horror short films, and who's your co-director with Terror Arcade?
Yeah, so I work with Ethan Evans. So he is a writer-director and co-director of Terror Arcade.
What was the incentive to create Terror Arcade? Where was that born out of for the pair of you?
Yeah, so we met at university, Ethan and I, doing film production, and we had just graduated uni and were really keen to continue making short films. So Ethan and I had already previously worked together on a short horror, and we're just really excited to continue making genre films in that area. So yeah, Terror Arcade was born out of that in 2018.
Now, I've been able to watch, because they're available, I've been able to watch Wither, Time Out, and Stagnant, are the 3 that I've watched of your selection that I was able to get to. And I think it's interesting what you're doing with around the 3-minute idea of your shorts. I mean, is that a dogma you've given yourself, or is that based on advice, or?
So really, it's just out of trying to be as contained and doable as possible. Yeah. Because all of our shorts have been over at least the first few years were all no funding, low budget, totally self-funded. So we were basically just trying to make stuff that was achievable with the resources we had around us. So yeah, they ended up being very short, kind of bite-sized stories because of that.
And is there an ambition that for any, if you were to, obviously you've won some awards with some of the shorts, so congratulations on that front. Well done.
Thank you.
And as a writer myself, I could see that for all of them, for what I watched, you could very much see these as almost proof of concept as well as short films in and of themselves.
Yeah. So that became very apparent to us quite early on when we started the Terror Arcade journey, that we sort of realised, okay, so these shorts, as great as short films are, and they're super useful stepping stones onto longer form stuff, we realised that actually if we could make stuff that could be utilised as longer form or proof of concepts, as you say, it will set us up for the future, and kind of give us something to use the shorts towards. And Time Out especially was one that Ethan and I were really keen to kind of, we were thinking about the future and the longevity of it whilst we were kind of talking about creating it and stuff. So yeah, we very quickly learned that if you can make shorts that can then be utilised as proof of concepts, they're a great calling card for that.
Okay, so you when you were sort of deciding on the provenance of whatever the horror is behind what's going on in Time Out, and Time Out's interesting in of itself, because it is obviously a short film like any others, but it's presented as an Insta story, I presume. Is it Insta story when it's in those kind of chapters?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, that was purely because it was born out of COVID times, that short film. And Ethan and I sort of had itchy feet, and we were really keen to sort of just make something. And it was in that very small window where you could have maybe like 5 or 6 people in your house at one time. Yeah. And we thought, brilliant, we can have, that's our max crew number, let's all just like band together and do it. So we invited one of our sort of frequent collaborators, Nick Bendel, and Faye Russell, and we all just sort of mucked in, got an amazing actor, Fiona McGarvey, to star in it. So yeah, it was basically a creative concept born out of that time. And the reason it was found footage sort of handheld was because we only had my iPhone, and Ethan was like, okay, let's utilize it. Let's use one of our phones. It just was born from that, really. But I think it actually works, you know, really well in that subgenre of found footage, because it just feels so real, which is what we intended, of course, like you say, with the Instagram story format.
Yeah. You can imagine somebody's putting that together over an evening, and obviously the evening descends into something much scarier than the whole, "Ooh, isn't this spooky? Isn't this spooky?" And then, Jesus, this is scary.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we had seen a picture of those Time Out dolls online. They were circulating on Twitter, and they freaked quite a lot of people out. And Ethan and I had never seen them before, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the perfect, you know, this is the perfect villain essentially to utilize." It's everybody seems to be so universally freaked out by these things. So yeah, it was received. It was received really well in the sense that people did believe that short film, and still do, is a real video from a real person.
Well, testament to your filmmaking. Well done.
Thank you.
So what's current? Have you got any works that are currently in circulation at the moment at festivals that you can mention?
Yeah, so we basically last year we got our first bit of funding essentially from Centerframe for one of our short films, because as I mentioned, everything's been self-funded up until that point. So we made a short film called Outside Noise, which is our latest project, which is also a proof of concept. So we finished that in February, and it's now being submitted to film festivals. So the premiere for that should hopefully be this year. So yeah, we're very excited about that one, and kind of whilst we worked on Outside Noise over the last couple of years, we've been really trying to focus on feature writing and getting some feature films in development. Big focus. So yeah, we got the short that's kind of been cooking and ready to go, and also some feature concepts as well.
And how are you finding the development of feature films as opposed to sort of because a 3-minute short is almost like a comedy skit, but with rather than a funny line, there's a scary line that you're trying to hit. Whereas a feature film, you've got to stew the juices a little more, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a whole other beast in that sense, and we were lucky actually over the last couple of years that we managed to have a couple of opportunities to write for some TV episodes, and that was a really brilliant kind of learning curve, as it allowed us to practice writing longer form, and that was a natural progression then into our feature film writing, that felt like, you know, moving from, like you say, the 3 pages, the 10 pages, up to the kind of TV 30, 40 pages, and now straight into features. So I feel like it's been a natural progression for us as writers, but of course can often be intimidating when you're starting out thinking, okay, like you say, this needs to be sustained for a longer amount of time, not just one or two punchy scares.
How did you come to the attention of Centerframe? Was that something you went for, or was Centerframe come and found you?
So that was something that we found last year online. I think we found the competition on Twitter or something. And I hadn't actually heard of the company before, but was very excited at the prospect of like a new filmmaking network. So when we saw that they offered production funding and they were really kind of genre friendly, we were immediately kind of, you know, drawn to that, because it can be really tricky getting genre funding, especially in the UK. So yeah, immediately kind of got the cogs turning on Outside Noise as a concept. I think we really quickly got the script together, you know, with the anticipation of submitting to Centerframe. So yeah, I mean, like I say, £10,000 production funding was something that we'd never, you know, been able to acquire before. So it was going to certainly be a step up from everything we'd done before in the short film world. And we were really keen to kind of like, you know, utilize our skills that we've learned, add some production value to some of our, you know, to our work. So yeah, we had our sights set on.
So as a tease, without giving too much away, what in production value terms, what's something you were definitely able to add that, you know, before the funding you got, you wouldn't really have been able to do, or not with ease at least?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this time we were able to play with some kit that we were really excited to utilize, stuff that we hadn't been able to afford before, make it look really, really cinematic.
Such as what? What sort of kit?
So we got really good. I think it was an Arri Alexa camera, and I mean, all my technical terms are pretty rubbish, so I'm not even going to try and.
You're talking to someone with less, so you'll be all right. Just throw names at us, and then people can fill in the gaps after.
Yeah, I want to say it was an Arri Alexa, but we had the most amazing Steadicam op because we hired him, and he had a Steadicam like gear. His name was Michael Vega, and he was from London, and he was super awesome. But he came in with this kit, got it all like rigged up, and we got some amazing shots because of that. So yeah, just things like that we weren't able to do before. It's just kind of just added, it's elevated it just that little bit to a higher level that we're very excited about.
And just as a more of an abstract question in terms of making horror, whether that be short or whether. What for you are the sort of the best what have you learned? Sorry, are the best ingredients for a good scare?
I think the best thing that seems to have worked for us so far has been keeping things practical where you can keep them practical. And again, a lot of that has been because of our budget restraints, but also practical SFX just translates so well on camera. Specifically in our latest short, I mean, it's always funny. There's always just someone hidden out of sight, slamming a door or hidden under the bed, pulling things or moving things around. But it translates so well doing all the old school stuff and just getting creative and, DIY scares. It's just, yeah, I mean, it takes a few takes, but it has paid off. So I love doing that, and we love getting creative and trying to make as much happen in camera as possible.
Yeah, I mean, in your film Stagnant, there's a lovely simple thing you do for building dread with just that, with the water dripping. Or is it water? Is it blood? You don't even know at the time when you're watching it at first. It's just something that's coming from seemingly nowhere, and being prepared for a horror film, you're thinking you're going to get your scare there and then, and it's just building and building. It's just a simple thing you've done there, I thought.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Ethan is he loves suspense and tension, and if he can draw it out for as long as he can, he will. And I think that there's some awesome moments throughout our kind of like our slate of moments that he's managed to do that. So like you say, anywhere we can kind of drag tension out is always a winner.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for sharing that about Terror Arcade, and best of luck with the new short when it hits the festivals, and good luck with the features you're developing. We'll move on now to 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Now, just for those that are listening in that don't know what this is, Jess has given me 3 films which hold fond memories for her. We're going to talk for 5 minutes about them, 5 minutes at a time, and then when the alarm goes off, we'll move on to the next film. Let us start with the first on your list, which is an adaptation of Neil Gaiman's children's horror novella, Coraline, same name, and directed by stop-motion specialist Henry Selick, who people might know the work of Night Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. So do you want to tell us where this fits in your film-watching life, why this holds such fond memories for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So although I didn't really get fully invested into the horror genre until my 20s when I was filmmaking, a lot of films that I loved growing up had like an element of kind of darkness or dark fantasy, like Donnie Darko or Monster House, and of course Coraline. And Coraline just feels like one of those certain films that immerse you so quickly and fully into its world. It feels so much bigger than what we're seeing on screen. And I think it's just, it's always been one that sort of stayed with me and captivated me and kind of like inspired everything that I do in some kind of way. Like I'll somehow find a way to reference Coraline, or, things spark a lot of kind of parallels to Coraline in my head quite naturally.
Did you come to it as a fan of the Neil Gaiman IP, or did you come to it just as a film?
So came to it just as a film. I hadn't read the book, and I've always been a fan of animated movies growing up. And it's just something about Laker's animation style that felt like a click. I saw the trailer and I was really intrigued and excited. Just went in blind really and watched it and kind of fell in love with it immediately. I just feel like it was an instant kind of resonated and just beautiful.
And where did you see this for the first time? Was this something you watched with people or with other friends, or did you catch this on your own, or you go to the cinema?
Yeah, so I didn't see this one in cinema, and I think I got it on DVD. And it's weirdly, this is one that I can never pinpoint the first time I watched it, but I remember it was always my go-to like comfort film, and still is, or rainy day film, or sick day film. But yeah, I think I must have watched it possibly with family. But since, it's just been one that I watch on my own and just feel like an immense sense of comfort, even though the more I watch it, and now watching it as an adult, I kind of realize how dark it is and twisted it is, disguised as this kind of like magical whimsy fairy tale.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've never been able to find how you draw the line between sort of children's horror and then therefore what is just horror. What do you think for someone who watched this film a lot, what do you think what's the dividing line between the horror you now know in the kind of adult world and this being something that is, appealing to the younger adult, I suppose?
Yeah. Do you know what? Weirdly, in all the watches as a teenager, it never dawned on me that it was actually like a scary film. It was always really like safe and comforting in my eyes. And it was only when I suggested to my nan, who was babysitting my then very young cousin, that they should watch it because she asked for recommendations. And then she told me they had to turn it off, 10 or 15 minutes in. I then realized that it was, actually, this is quite dark. And I had a new perspective on it. And then every time I watched it from that point, I realized how, like you say, it's very, very playful in dancing between it being child's fantasy, but there is a lot of horror in there. So I think that really excited me. And I only very recently read the book last year. And it further kind of like increased not only my admiration for this adaptation, but how Neil Gaiman is so dark in his writing as well, and not afraid to go there really, and not afraid to be to put Coraline in fearful situations, because it's so much more of like a character building, scenario, I suppose.
Now you've read the book, then what could you see? What could you see were the challenges then with the adaptation? Is there obvious stuff that was in the book that isn't in the film, and is the stuff added to the film that's not in the book?
Yeah, I mean, there are of course many like similarities, but also it really kind of it blew my mind about how the team read that source material.
Oh, there's our 5 minutes. Well done. There's your first 5 minutes. Do you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was so impressive how the team read the book and somehow, manifested it into the vision that is the animated movie, which is vastly different in a way, and a lot more kind of Americanized and colourful and all sorts. So yeah, just super interesting that it's a great adaptation for sure. No,
I mean it's exercise I love to do, the comparison between this when I've seen the film before reading the source material to then see what was missing and what's been added and things like that. Right then, your number 2 choice. We're going to jump 2 years ahead in time to 2011. Super 8, the coming of age action adventure from. I mean, I could name 100 things. I'll say the creator of Lost and the guy that kickstarted Star Wars with The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams. I mean, but reading his biog, I mean, he goes back to 1990 for his first screenplay. So, but also stars a very young Ellie Fanning in it as well. And I mean, when I saw this at the cinema myself, it was the sort of best Steven Spielberg film that Spielberg never made. I mean, obviously he produced it, but he didn't direct it. But do you want to talk about how you come across this film, why this film's important for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, growing up, I loved Spielberg movies, and the Goonies. Of course, it wasn't his, but it was partly his. And I was so close to adding a Spielberg movie to this list because I feel he's the most influential filmmaker in my journey of choosing this as a career. But Super 8 undoubtedly had like the biggest impact on me, quote unquote, in my formative teenage years. Because it felt so nostalgic, and as you say there, it feels just like a Spielberg movie, and it felt like my generation's Goonies. It felt like something for us that was ours. It really kind of resonated with me in that sense. But I remember really wanting to see it in cinema and seeing posters up at Odeon and stuff, but I missed it, and my mum got it for me for my birthday on DVD. And we watched it, and I remember specifically feeling compelled to watch it again the following night. And I think everyone has those like core memory viewing moments as films, that are really special to them and that they remember. And Super 8 for me was that. It's like life before Super 8 and life after Super 8 in my timeline. Because it's like a really visceral memory of like my mum having friends over downstairs, and I could kind of hear them all chatting. And then I had the lights off in my room, tiny TV. I was sat on the floor and I had a blanket over me, and just watching it again, like in that much of a kind of one-on-one personal like experience, felt like everything was in slow motion. Like everything that I loved so much from movies and wanted so much from movies, just I felt like was, unraveling in front of me. So it was very like memorable viewing experience. And I'm forever kind of trying to chase the feeling of how that film made me feel. And I want to try and chase that magic. And, it was so powerful. It's kind of like, that's what's inspired me to make films myself.
So is there a standout scene or sequence from the film that really sort of, whenever you rewatch it, that you look forward to, or you might absentmindedly just forget and then be like, oh yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I have to shout out the train crash scene because it's so like everything you want in a blockbuster movie. It's like the length of the sequence and the spectacle. It's relentless. It's like so dramatic that you almost just want to like slow clap after it. I love that. And it's like putting these kids in like such an extraordinary situation. It kind of like really gets your adrenaline. So I love the train crash scene. But I think Michael Giacchino does the score, and he's my favorite piece in the whole score is the letting go, which is like the final scene where he lets go of the necklace. And it's every time I watch it, it's like so moving and just like a beautifully delicate and powerful moment. So I would say those two.
And if it's a film that's rooted in something you've wanted to emulate, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you've made anything on this scale yet, but in terms of influences, can you see in any of the work you've done so far the influence of this film anywhere?
Do you know what? I don't know if I can yet. And again, it's kind of it's like more of a feeling. And again, I love all the coming of age, like 70s and 80s stuff, but this feeling that Super 8 has, it's kind of like incredibly powerful and moving, the story itself and the ending, but to be able to recreate that in some sense would be the goal. But because our shorts are so jam-packed and quick, and there's scales and all sorts, it doesn't feel like I've been able to capture that just yet. I'm sorry, we're beeping again, aren't we?
It's all right, we got to 5 minutes. It's okay. Your third choice is 1952. We're jumping back to a piece of classical cinema the musical rom-com Singin' in the Rain. Where does this come into your life? How do you discover this, and how do you fall in love with it?
So I grew up loving the old Hollywood musicals and would watch them a lot in our household with my mum. Like Meet Me in St. Louis, and I'm a Judy Garland fan, and all of those kind of nostalgic old-timey masterpieces essentially. But Singin' in the Rain actually came into my life a lot later, and I think it was when I was at uni studying film.
Okay.
And I had seen snippets of it on TV. Of course, we've all seen the famous scenes, but it was the first time that I actually sat down, watched the whole thing in one sitting. And it was just like, of course, the cinematic masterpiece, and it has the reputation, rightfully so. But I think when you think of all the core things that you want from when you're watching a movie, this delivers on like every level.
I mean, I don't think I've seen it all the way through for donkey's years, but like you say, we're bombarded with clips for it because it's such an iconic film. How did it feel sort of piecing it together when suddenly you're just watching it and then those moments appear within the context of the bigger movie? Do you remember that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was so pleasantly surprised about how clever the script is and how fast it moves and how ahead of its time the film was, especially the opening is just so funny. And then, like you say, when it got to all those kind of checkpoints of the iconic numbers and that, it just everything just clicked into place, and it's so well structured and just well made. Every moving piece in it is just filmmaking at its finest, that it just works together so seamlessly. I just remember it just being an absolute treat. And I think what struck me the most was how it felt like it could have been made a couple of years ago. They're just so funny and satirical about Hollywood and how them having to adjust to it being propelled forward by the new technology of sound being introduced and all the problems that introduces. It was just a joyful movie to watch. And
are you able to have a favorite moment in it, or is a favorite moment like one that everyone would know? Is that in terms of the film coming to it like that?
I mean the famous sequence at the end where Gene Kelly's character is kind of I think it's the film within the film.
Okay.
And he's screening, the film that they've done, and they do the most beautiful sequences of dancing on these big backdrops, like on the film set backdrops. And he and Sid Charisse, I think it is, are against the pink backdrop, and they're dancing, and her dress is kind of being blown up into the heavens with the wind machines. And I think that's just ingrained into my brain as just the scale of it is unmatched. I feel even now, I haven't really watched a modern film that I feel like has really captured the scale of Singin' in the Rain.
And it was interesting for me because I must have never looked at the IMDb page before of Singin' in the Rain, and then to discover that Gene Kelly co-directed the film as well as starred in it. That was a bit of a surprise. I'd not made that connection at all. Yeah,
it's pretty mad, isn't it? Because back in the day, I mean, the cast, they're good at everything. They're, to be dancing like that, singing like that, and like you say, co-directing, choreographing, they truly feel like superstars, the jack of all trades, the fact that they could, they had a vision like that. And for him as well, obviously choreographing so many of the numbers, it's so impressive.
And this is where, I guess, where it is of its time, you get the sense of, we've got colour, so let's take advantage of colour. There's no mistaking that this is a film there's just bang, bang, bang off the screen.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And it's not only highlighting the pain of filmmaking, but truly the technicolor magic of not just filmmaking, but everything. Like you say, just their world is just otherworldly, which is just why it's such a visual treat as well. But yeah, my God, every frame, you could just pull frames from the whole thing, and it's just beautiful.
Well, there we go. That's our 5 minutes are up. Well done. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and memories of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. And thank you for sharing with us a little bit about Terror Arcade and what you're up to. And Britflix wishes you best of luck with that endeavour.
Thank you.
And it just gives me to say thank you very much for joining us on the Britflix podcast.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Ready to level up your career? Text DISH to 44043 now to dive into a world of exciting technician opportunities at DISH. From cutting-edge technology to a supportive work environment, DISH offers the perfect platform for your success. Connect with us today to discover how you can be part of a dynamic team driving innovation. Connect today and join the DISH family, where innovation meets opportunity. Text DISH to 44043 to kickstart your journey towards a rewarding career.